Sorry. Hello, everyone. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. My name is Leah Sudursky-Dajnet, and I am pleased to welcome you to Environment and Climate Change Canada's second Ask a Scientist live event. Aujourd'hui marque la Journée internationale des femmes et des filles en sciences de l'ONU. Donc, nous voulons célébrer la contribution des femmes dans le domaine de la science. I am here today with Dr. Camille Garneau, Dr. Danae Paquet-Ricard, and Margaret Zawatsky. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and their field of research. Let's start with Camille.
Bonjour à tous. Alors, moi, je suis une chercheure scientifique en modélisation de surface terrestre avec une spécialisation sur la représentation de la neige, des lacs et de la végétation dans les modèles de prévision météo et environnementale. So I'm a research scientist in land surface modeling with an expertise on the representation of snow, lakes and vegetation in weather and environmental model forecasting models.
Donc bonjour, moi je suis une chercheure scientifique qui travaille sur les modèles de prévision météo au Canada et je me spécialise dans la représentation des nuages, du rayonnement et de la précipitation dans ces modèles. So I'm a research scientist working on numerical weather prediction models in Canada, and I'm focusing my research on the representation of cloud, precipitation and radiation in those models.
Thank you.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Margaret. Je travaille à Environnement et Changement climatique Canada. Sorry, everyone. Et je suis écologiste là. Hi, everyone. My name is Margaret Zawatsky. I work at Environment and Climate Change Canada, where I am an applied ecologist. I also do some work helping to organize various caribou-related initiatives, like the National Boreal Caribou Knowledge Consortium, and last fall, the North American Caribou Workshop.
Thank you, Margaret. Now let's open our panel to questions from our audience. Vous pouvez poser vos questions en français ou en anglais via Facebook, YouTube, Twitter et LinkedIn. Now with our first question, which is to everyone. What made you choose your field of expertise? How about we start with Margaret?
I guess I shouldn't have given the mic back.
It's okay.
So I started working in ecology kind of accidentally. I was going to school for science in my undergrad, and I got a job as a summer research assistant in a wetland ecology lab, actually, at McMaster University. And over the years that I worked with them, I discovered I loved fieldwork so much, I just couldn't give it up. I wanted to keep doing ecology, and I've always loved nature, and it seemed like a very good fit of the things that I like and the science skills that I was acquiring.
Cool. Danae?
Well, for myself, I first started studying physics at the university because at that time that was really the science that I was loving, and I didn't know what I was going to do with that. But after that, I discovered that meteorology and climatology is a branch of physics, and at that time it was like the more applied branch that I found in physics. So that's why I went to physics to atmospheric science for the master and the PhD after that.
Cool.
For myself, I started at university. I started studying geology, oceanography, and meteorology. And after a few semesters, I discovered that looking at rocks under a microscope was not my thing. So I went more towards meteorology, and I continued on to the PhD in meteorology, and I got lucky and found a job at Environment and Climate Change Canada, and I'm doing what I love, so that's great.
That's nice. So our next question is from Vanessa, from Facebook. Why did you choose your field of research? I think we covered that a little bit, but Camille, do you want to expand on that?
Well, my PhD was on the interaction between vegetation and the atmosphere, and how it's now, currently in the present, and how it will be in the future. So climate studies, so you look 100 years in the future and see how that changes. So I got my interest in the interactions between the surface and the atmosphere, that's where it started and it bloomed. And so now I've moved on to snow, lakes, soil moisture. All this has an impact on the atmosphere and our weather. So that's why I'm working where I am.
Interesting.
Well, for my part, I'm looking more into clouds and the weather prediction models. And one of the things that clouds are one of the major uncertainties in models, both for weather and climatological models. So there's a lot of unanswered questions about there's a lot of physics that we don't understand yet with the clouds. So to me, that makes it really interesting. And there's a lot of interaction with the sun, with the radiation from the earth, and of course it controls all the precipitation, the snow, the freezing rain, and everything. So I found it really interesting.
That sounds really interesting.
So I think my situation is a little bit different in that I'm not a research scientist at Environment and Climate Change Canada. I'm a physical scientist, which means that I support some of the other researchers in the work that they're doing. That said, right now I'm working with a research scientist on a project that studies the effects of different land uses on pollinators in agricultural environments. So things like, what should the average field size in a broader landscape be to maximize the number of bees that you're getting in your fields to help pollinate your crops and that kind of thing. And I guess the reason I ended up on this project is, first of all, I find that kind of thing really interesting. I love looking at really evaluating the effects of different strategies that we could take to conserve species and whether they're effective or not effective. And I was also fortunate in that I have a background through my bachelor's and my master's in landscape ecology, and that helped me to get this job where I am currently doing that study. And I'm sure that when the study wraps up, we will conclude with sort of moving forward on similar projects.
Yeah. So Margaret, this next question comes on Facebook from Karin. How often do you get to go out in the field in your research?
Right now, not a lot. I did get to go out for a couple of days this past year to help one of the undergrad students who is being supervised by the research scientist I'm working with. But mainly most of my work with Environment and Climate Change Canada is analyzing data that have already been collected by students, co-op students and so on in the field, and then analyzing that to answer research questions and produce scientific papers that show the results. But when I was doing my master's, I did a ton of field work. I was out there pretty much every day, taking water samples and listening for frogs and trying to identify what's in these different wetlands, because my master's was on wetland research. So really, not too much now, but I used to do a lot.
Do you wish to do more?
It would be nice, but I think, the really important part for me about being a scientist is being able to ask and answer research questions.
Okay.
So as long as I'm doing that, I'm pretty happy. But getting out in the field is always awesome.
Yeah. Notre prochaine question va être en français pour Camille. Comment êtes-vous arrivé où est-ce que vous êtes?
Alors j'ai la chance d'avoir des parents qui m'ont supporté dans mes études, qui m'ont soutenu, qui m'ont laissé choisir le sujet, l'endroit même. J'ai fait mon baccalauréat scientifique en Angleterre. Après, j'ai fait ma maîtrise en France, dans le sud de la France, toujours en météorologie et océanographie. Et ensuite, je suis venue au Canada il y a 10 ans pour faire mon doctorat à l'UQAM à Montréal. Et à la fin de mes études à l'UQAM, j'ai rencontré un chercheur scientifique de Environnement et Changement climatique Canada. Il m'a embauchée pour un postdoc. Le postdoc étant un stage à la fin du doctorat qu'on peut faire dans une entreprise ou avec le gouvernement, dans un laboratoire gouvernemental. Et j'ai passé un concours et je suis maintenant chercheur scientifique à Environnement Canada. Donc voilà.
Danae, This question is from Taylor from Facebook. What's your favorite thing about working in science?
I think it's that you have all sort of puzzles to solve all the time, and for me, I'm working on a computer all day, but it's a mix of you have really scientific question, for example, about clouds, like I was saying earlier, but also some technical puzzles, like we work with different programmation languages, and so you have to find out how to do it. Sometimes you just learn a new language from scratch, and so there's always different sort of question that you're trying to answer, and sometimes it's really technical, sometimes it's trying to understand how the supercomputers are working or why they are not working well. Yeah. And sometimes it's more like really the physics, the cloud physics and everything. So that's question at all different levels, and it's really fun to try to have answers.
Do you want to add to that, Margaret? What's your favorite thing in science?
Sure. Well, I mean, I definitely agree with everything that you just said. I love the problem-solving aspects of it. If I was going to add something on top of that, I would say I really love being able to work with other scientists on a daily basis, and just being in an atmosphere where not only do I like to solve puzzles, but so does everyone else around. And, you know, it's perfectly okay to spend some time chatting with everyone, trying to get to the bottom of, well, why is this biological phenomenon happening? And everyone in the room is just as interested as you are in trying to figure it out.
Yeah, so while we are on this topic, so why did you choose your field of research? Oh, no, we already asked that, sorry. We have a question from Facebook from Irina for Danae. What's your favorite cloud type?
Oh, wow. That's an interesting question. I would say the small cumuli, because it's small clouds during summer mostly, and they are really moving fast and really nice with the small kind of cotton balls, exactly. So they're really nice, and they're really hard to represent in models. So it's and it's clouds that you see when there's also nice weather, and so that would be my favorite clouds.
So this is a question for all three of you. Who is your role model and why? Let's start with Kemi.
I wouldn't say I have a role model per se, but I would say all the women that paved the way before us, the women scientists, I think that came before us and made it easier for us to be here. And I'm hoping that we are doing the same thing for young girls that want to be in science, and they'll just get easier and easier. And we see it already that a lot of the new hires, a lot of the new people that are hired, it's about 50-50 women and men. So we see it's going a long way.
For me, it would be a researcher, Julia Slingo, who's been a chief scientist at the Met Office in England. And she once told us, a few young students at the time, that while she was still a student or maybe a postdoc, she was having her kids, and she felt confident that she could handle family time and stop for a few years and be with her kids and then come back to research. And she was so confident about it, even if it was years before us, that it made me feel that, okay, we can do that also, and we can have a balanced life between, for example, family and work.
Do you struggle a lot with that balance, or? Well,
I have a wonderful husband for that. And he's been taking a lot of he's more at home than I am, and he's taking a lot of that job for him, and so he's taking care a lot of the kids. And but I also feel that I can have a balanced life. It's possible to work and to do great work when I'm at home, I'm not working and I'm with my family and my kids, and it's possible.
Yes, that has to be nice.
Yeah, thanks.
I always find questions about role models a little hard to answer because I feel like, you know, there are a lot of different people who have influenced me along the way, and I try to learn from them in different ways. But if I had to pick one person, I would say that I learned a ton from my master's supervisor, Lenore Farrig. She works at Carleton as a landscape ecologist, and when I started working in her lab, I didn't know she was really well known in her field. I just thought, oh, I've read a couple papers by her. She seems to do interesting stuff. But I found out later she's a really great scientist. And what I really admire about her is her ability to maintain that work-life balance that you were just talking about. She's incredibly efficient, writes lots of papers. She doesn't just supervise grad students writing papers, but still sets aside time to write her own. And still, you know, at the end of the day, she goes home, she turns off her work emails and has her own time. And I really respect, first of all, that she does that. And second, that she's still able to get a ton of amazing work done on top of it and really contribute to the world of science at the same time.
So what are one of your favorite moments in science or in like the field, or like case just in science in general, since you ladies don't work in the field that often or at all? Yeah, you can continue.
Sorry, can you just ask the question again?
What's one of your like favorite moments in like your field of research or in the field?
Also hard to answer, but one of my favorite things from the field, I think, would have been really early on when I was still working as a field assistant during my undergrad. The second summer I did that. I spent a lot of the summer working with the grad students in that lab, helping them to track turtles. That, by the way, is really fun. You have little antennae attached to their shells, and you go out with this huge tracking apparatus, and it sort of beeps at you and you figure out where they are and you can track their movements. But anyway, I was doing a sort of side project looking at water quality and frog abundance of different species in a few different wetlands. And one of my fondest memories from that summer is when I was starting to run overtime a little bit and I couldn't get all of my work done on my own little project while I was in the field with the group that I was working with. My parents came up with me into the field for a little over a weekend, and I got to show them around all of my different field sites, and they helped me catch frogs and take water samples, and that was when I realized how much fun it was to lead a field team. And part of, it is fun to tell your parents what to do a little bit on occasion. But anyway, I really liked that aspect of leading my own project, and it's part of what made me realize I wanted to do a master's project where I also got to lead a field team, because you can get so much more done that way and learn a lot more.
Thank you.
For my part, it would be when I made my defense thesis. So at the end of your PhD, you have a defense, and it's a really stressful moment. You have to answer a lot of hard questions, but at the same time, you feel that you've accomplished something, and that it's the first time you really feel that you became a specialist of your question that you were trying to answer through your PhD. So it was a really nice moment, and you're in front of specialists for sure. You're in front of friends that are scientists as you, but you're also with your friends and family, and you get into a discussion about your work that you've been doing for so long, and you have a feeling of accomplishment, and then you really feel that you've become a specialist in your field, and it's a really great realization at this point. And then you say, okay, that's what I'm gonna do with my work, and it's really nice. It's really it was it was a really nice moment.
What was your thesis about, if you can explain it?
Yes, it was about cloud and radiation. So I was looking at ways to represent how the clouds interact with radiation. And I was testing a new way of doing this representation in a Canadian model. And I was trying to understand where are the errors and why the new methodology was better, but how even if you know that you're putting a better physical relationship, it will reveal other problems, for example, in the model, and explain that. And so that was most of my PhD.
Camille, what about you?
I think my most memorable moment was a year ago, actually. I was working on a project with the Canadian Space Agency. This project was Environment Climate Change Canada and the Canadian Space Agency working together because we have a lack of observation from satellite related to snow mass. So we have snow cover. It a satellite will be able to tell you if there's snow or no snow.
Okay.
You can see it with the white, so it's quite easy to see. But it doesn't tell you how much snow you have.
Okay.
And that's an important variable in our models. So we started a project and to see what kind of satellite we would need. How many times a week would we need observations so that our models would give better information to the Canadians, that kind of information. And then after this study, we organized a meeting with the Canadian Space Agency, the American Space Agency, NASA, and the European Space Agency, ESA, in Geneva, and that was last January, 13 months ago. And with scientists from around the world and these 3 science agencies, and it was a very, very important moment for me because I was sent as the representative of Environment Canada. So I think that was a highlight for me.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next question, I'd like to remind our audience that you can ask questions on our social media platforms at Environment and Climate Change Canada accounts. Because today is a celebration of women in science, have you faced any challenges as a woman in science?
Well, I would say the work-life balance. For example, I had my 2 daughters during my PhD, so I took a bit more time than the men's PhD, but I got through it and I defended my thesis as everybody. I think that was a challenge, not to get lost between, to lose your motivation when you have so much at home going on, but I did it in 4 years, and I think that was my biggest challenge. And now that my kids are older, they're 6 and 8, it's much easier. And we have, I think Environment Climate Change Canada allows us to have, days when the kids are sick and all that. So it's easy for us. I think they do enough for us to have both a scientist career and a mom career as well.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Well, my situation is pretty similar to Camille, but I would like to, at one point when I was a student, there was that great researcher telling us that sometimes we act differently, and he was just giving an example, and he says sometimes men will see, for example, a job application with 10 different items or requirements, and they will see that maybe they can fit 1 or 2 that they are able to do, and they will apply and say, okay, that's for me. And he was saying, be careful to the women and girls and the audiences, be careful, because women will see that, oh, maybe there's 1 or 2 that I cannot do, so I won't apply. So for me, it was really like, we see ourselves maybe differently, and we shouldn't. So we should go for it and like just
take chances.
Yeah, exactly. Take chances and don't stop. Don't be scared. And so for me, don't underestimate yourself. And so that was I think a great message at that point, and I was really glad to hear that. And I think if you keep that in mind and you just go for it, you have to go. You have to take a chance and try.
Yeah, that's very good advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say I've encountered any challenges as a woman in science that are specific to being a woman. I mean, everyone encounters challenges in science, but I don't know. I think I've been pretty lucky, and so far none of my challenges have really related to being a woman specifically.
Yeah. So our next question is from Twitter, from Dennis. What's something about your life as a scientist that isn't that well known? Do I answer that, Margaret? Since
sure. Yeah. So something that's not that well known. Well, I guess it's probably come out throughout this conversation already, but it might be surprising to some of the non-scientists out there how little time most scientists actually spend in a laboratory or in the field. We don't spend most of our time looking down microscopes or out there collecting data, searching for that rare bird and writing it down. We do those things, but most of our time is really, okay, we have the data now. What takes the longest amount of time is sitting at our computers, analyzing the data, and writing it up afterwards in a way that we can share with others so that they can learn from our work and build on it.
That's a hard question, but I would say that since I work on clouds, that since I'm really I'm not on the side of observations, I don't know all the very, very well all the clouds that are out there. I don't know all the names and everything, but because I see it from a different point of view. So sometimes I have question about, what's that cloud, the mom, for example, and I have no clue. Because, for sure, I'm working on it from a different perspective. So, and we are really sitting behind a computer. Mm-hmm. So we're not doing observations in the field and everything. Of course, we learn from that and we use that on a day-to-day basis, but we don't go out there. So there's a lot from meteorology that I don't know.
I think it would be that we do a lot of programming. We're geeks, actually. We're behind the computer. At school, they don't teach you the different languages that you will use every day at work. Computer programming.
Oh, okay.
And so you learn as on the go, on the fly. And so we're multilingual, I think, in computer languages. So I think that's something I wasn't expecting. But I love it, actually. I love learning new languages, spoken or computer.
So why do you need to learn so many computer languages?
Well, each language has its advantages and disadvantages. So some are easier to learn but are less performing. Yeah, it's not as fast.
Okay.
Yeah, powerful.
Yeah.
Some are for creating figures. Some are for running a model, and there are plenty of uses, plenty of languages.
So our next question is from YouTube. How does your research impact the everyday Canadians?
Okay. Well, I recently started working on a new project at Environment Climate Change Canada. It will be to set up hydrological forecasts. So that will tell the Canadians if a drought is forecasted or if a flood is forecasted. I think that will allow them to prepare for a flood, for example. with, maybe 1 or 2 day notice. And I think it will help the Canadians greatly. And I'm working on the snow part of the hydrological cycle for this project, but it will also help the weather forecasting model, because snow has an impact as much on the atmosphere as on the hydrological side. So when it melts, it all goes to the rivers, and that's the important time for forecasting.
For floods and everything.
Yeah.
Well, I'm also working, but on the forecasting. So one of my first projects at Environment and Climate Change Canada was on the summer convection precipitation. So how do we predict that with the high resolution model over Canada, so for the next 2 days? And I was working on improving directly this prediction, so how to improve the forecast for the high intensity thunderstorms over Canada. And it worked really well, and that was my subject of area was, I demonstrated that it was helping the forecasters. So it was implemented, and the next summer it was in the operational forecasting models. So I think it helped for the high intensity and thunderstorms in summer over Canada.
Thank you.
So I guess to answer this question, I'm going to talk about the pollinator work that I do, and also one other thing that I mentioned at the very beginning that I think hasn't come up much yet, which is the caribou planning that I do. So the first half of that, the pollinator project I'm working on, as I described a bit earlier, it's looking at how different ways of structuring farmland landscapes in terms of the size of the fields, what's planted, what diversity of crops are planted in a larger area, how these sorts of things affect bee abundance. And when we have the answers to those questions, I think that, obviously more studies will always need to be done to get really precise estimates, but I think it will help to give us a direction to go to help conserve our wild pollinators into the future, which is very important for Canada's farmlands, whether you're a farmer or someone who eats food that is produced from fields in Canada. And the second half of that, if you live more in the north, in the boreal areas of Canada, one of the projects that I'm helping to coordinate right now is the National Boreal Caribou Knowledge Consortium. It's a bit of a mouthful of a name, but basically it's trying to bring together many different sources of knowledge across Canada, so scientific knowledge, Indigenous knowledge, knowledge from industry and academia and NGOs, and sort of what can we pull together that we know about caribou to help conserve and recover the species into the future. And I think that has value for all Canadians because, the caribou is an iconic Canadian species. It's on our quarter. And, it's, you should conserve species just for their own intrinsic value. But in addition, caribou is very socioeconomically important to many northern and Indigenous communities. So I think it also has tangible benefits in that way.
There are many students in school watching this event right now. Many of them are considering going into science, but they're not sure if they should. Do you have any advice for them?
I would say that if you think you'll enjoy it and find it rewarding, you should definitely go for it. If nothing else, studying science is really great to get a more objective way of looking at the world. It's really good for making you think critically about many different topics. For example, you go on Facebook, you see a petition for one thing or another, and you stop and think, it's like, okay, well, are the data that they are presenting total numbers, like, oh, Canada spends this many dollars on this, or is it per capita numbers, like, well, per person we spend this much, and is it comparing it to other situations, like we spend this much on environmental conservation, is that a lot or a little? Well, we don't know until we compare it to how much we spend on other things. So that kind of thing, I think it's really good for developing critical thinking, and it's a lot of fun. You should do it.
I would say that if there's a field or a subject that you're passionate about it in science, you should just go for it, because you'll enjoy to study it at school, and that's, I think, the most important thing first. And then like, maybe don't be stopped by the job, or that someone will wrote that it's going to be that after this kind of study, because jobs in science are evolving really fast, and they are really, there's a bunch of it. So when you start in one field, you don't know exactly what's going to be the job that goes with it, but there's going to be something, and there's a lot of it, and it's really diverse, I would say. So if there's really a subject or a field that you love and you want to like pursue it and push it, you should go for it.
I think if they're curious and they like solving puzzles, I'd say go for it. And science is it's always evolving. It's always changing. You can never get bored. You always learn something every day.
It's true.
And as a research scientist, I know I'm doing lots of different tasks every day. And so it's not, you don't repeat the same thing every day, 5 days a week.
Everything's new.
Everything's new. You're always working on a different subject with different people. It evolves with time. I think it's a great career.
Camille, j'ai une question pour vous de Danny de Facebook. Comment les courants océaniques permettent-ils de mieux prédire la météo?
Alors, les courants océaniques, alors, faut voir que là, je suis en train de me référer à mes cours d'université, ok? Donc, c'est pas mon expertise, mais j'ai eu quelques cours dessus. Les courants océaniques, en fait, transportent de la chaleur bien mieux que les courants atmosphériques. Donc, par exemple, on a le courant Gulf Stream, c'est ça, le Gulf Stream, qui apporte la chaleur jusqu'en Europe. Et c'est pour ça qu'on a beau être à la même latitude qu'en Europe, ici on a un climat très très froid, et en Europe ils n'ont pas l'hiver n'est pas aussi froid. C'est parce que l'océan leur apporte de la chaleur et de l'humidité.
C'est intéressant.
Voilà.
We have a question from Twitter from Jay Hodson. What advice would you give to young women just starting a science major in college right now?
Who's answering?
Danaid, you can answer.
Keep going.
Yeah, go. I don't know. I don't have a specific. I don't have an idea right now. Just go for it and don't be shy, and you can do mistakes. It's not a problem, and I don't know.
Well, yeah,
it's sometimes it's hard, but you have to continue and keep trying, and
yeah, like we did touch on it a little bit. Kemi, you were saying like you started in something that did interest you, and then you ended up finding something else.
Yeah. I started, my bachelor was on Earth and atmospheric science, and after a trimester I realized that, well, I'm more attracted to meteorology. So then I was at university, I was able to change my major to meteorology and not Earth and meteorology, Earth science and meteorology. So it's normal that when you start, you don't know really, you just refine it as the years go. So I'd say for me it was a good move to start wide and focus afterwards on what interests me.
Do you have anything to add, Margaret?
Yeah, I actually had a fairly similar experience where I started out very wide. I started going to university for undergrad, not even knowing for sure if I wanted to stay in science. There are lots of other things that I liked too. I thought at one point about going into art or whatever, but I thought, based on the way the course loads work, it's much easier to do all your first year required science courses and then switch into an arts program later than it is to go the other way around, because science has so many specific required courses you have to take. So definitely, you know, if you're thinking about doing science, it's definitely a good move to start that way. And any opportunity that you get to actually experience what doing that science looks like as a job or like through volunteering, take it, because it's very different from what it looks like in the classroom. I mean, definitely you can tell in the classroom whether you're interested in a particular topic. But I mean, at one point I thought that I might be interested in studying virology. I still think it's fascinating. But after I had the really valuable opportunity to volunteer in a virology lab for a year, I found that like test tubes and biosafety cabinets and, you know, that whole sort of almost chemistry-oriented way of life was not the kind of science that I wanted to do. So that's, you know, also part of, in addition to my really good ecology fieldwork experiences, that's kind of what guided me in that direction. So definitely take any opportunity for practical experience that you can get.
What's virology?
It's the study of viruses
Okay.
and sort of how they infect people. It's similar to immunology, but looking at it from the point of view of the virus.
Okay. We have a question from Facebook. In which area of environmental science research have women made the biggest difference? I don't know if you know this answer.
I don't know if I know enough. I don't know if I know enough about environmental science research in general. I will say that in ecology, I think women are doing very well. At least half of my workplace, possibly more, is women. My supervisors, a number of them are women. I think we're doing well in that area. I can't speak to the other ones so much.
I think on the physics side, I think there's less women for now. I think it's changing now, but for now there hasn't been a lot of women. I think physics, mathematics, and informatics are the three that are, and engineering also. And since in atmospheric science, it's really the three of it: physics, math, and informatics. So computing science. So there's not much women for now, but it's changing. Yeah, it's slowly changing. So.
We're in the same field, so we still have meetings with colleagues where we're in large minority.
Right. Yeah.
So, but it's evolving. It's evolving. The young generation. You have a lot more women than before, so it's on the good side.
We have a question from Julie from Twitter. What's your dream project? It's a very large question.
So I don't know if I actually have the expertise to do this in the future, but something that I've often thought would be really great to have is if there was one source of information on the web or somewhere where you can go to find out about what environmental protection is already being done, both in Canada and around the world, and really bringing together, like, you know, I think I started thinking about this when I was getting ready to start my master's, and I was thinking, well, I want to find an ecology project on conservation that's going to be novel, that's going to make a difference, all of this. And it's surprisingly hard to find information that's accessible all in one place that tells you what's already been done. You really have to chase down different rabbit holes after that to figure it out. So I think it'd be really great if there was a broad source like that. Again, probably not something I'm going to do in my lifetime. I'm not a web developer. I don't have all of this information, but I think it is a dream that I have that will hopefully happen at some point.
Do you guys have any ideas? No?
No.
Okay, so that's questions from Twitter. Let's say you have 30 seconds to tell the entire world one thing. What would it be?
One what?
Like if you had 30 seconds to tell the world one thing.
one thing.
Yeah.
You have an idea?
Yeah.
like
Okay. 30
fun
seconds.
fact or something.
Well, I think it would be about climate change.
Yeah.
Like, it's our only Earth. It's our only planet. So we have to take it into our hands and act now and do things about it right now. That would be.
I would say, related to weather forecasts, that the public is not aware of all the work that goes behind icons that you see on a
Yes.
website. There are so many people, engineers, research scientists, physical scientists, computer scientists, analysts. I'm missing plenty, I'm sure. But there's so much work that goes behind, and we're talking about predicting the future.
Yes.
Not many people can do that.
True.
And, you know, nature is chaotic, and it's very hard to predict the future, but we're gaining in quality of forecast 1 day per each 10 year. So 10 years ago, the quality of forecast that we had at day 3, for example, is now the quality of the forecast that we have at day 4. So we're gaining quality
That's good.
every 10 years. So no, the forecasts were not better before. They're better now. We have more observations. For example, I was telling you about the satellite that we're working on with the Canadian Space Agency. The idea budded in a scientist, in the head of scientists 3-4 years ago, and the satellite might go up in something like 10, 12, 15 years. And it's a lot of work. Many scientists from across the world, agencies working together, environmental prediction, space agencies, industries working to build the satellite. So it's a lot of work, and saying that they got it wrong again is a bit fast.
So no one's sitting at their desk with a crystal ball or anything.
No.
So I realized I actually do have something I wanted to add to that. It took me a minute to process my thoughts there, but I would say it's really important for everyone to understand the distinction between scientific uncertainty and uncertainty in one's own opinions. So the way that scientific uncertainty works is you do an experiment, you do it multiple times, and maybe you see slightly different results from time to time. So, maybe, for example, you are heating up a pot of water and you want to see how long it will take for it to come to a boil.
Yeah.
And, maybe usually it'll take somewhere in the 3 to 4 minute mark. You might say, okay, on average, it takes it 3.5 minutes to come to a boil, give or take 30 seconds. We have a very high level of confidence in our estimate, but we can't promise you it's always going to take 3 minutes and 30 seconds. We might be a little off.
Yeah.
Occasionally, it might even take like 30 seconds. It's unlikely, but it's possible. So when you see scientific uncertainty in the media or anywhere else, keep in mind that it doesn't mean that the science is wrong. It just means that we have quantified the extent to which we're not quite certain. We still have a high degree of confidence in our results. It's usually the 95% is the usual cutoff if we say a conclusion. But yeah, I think scientific uncertainty is important for people to understand.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next question, I'd like to remind the audience that you still have a little bit of time to ask your questions via our social media accounts. So next question, I really like this one. It's from Tia from Twitter. How can we ensure that our laws and politics are informed by science? And there's a two-parter. What can citizens do to help?
What, can you repeat?
Sure. So how can we ensure that our laws and politics are informed by science?
Yeah. I think the citizens have to be informed. They have to have a good critical sense, and like a little bit like you were saying just before, it's uncertainty in science is well, it's not skepticism. It's not. It doesn't make the science. It doesn't show that the science is not good or wrong. Yeah. It's really part of the scientific process. So I think we have to have a better communication. We have to improve the scientific. We have to improve the way we communicate to people, and we have to keep trying, because sometimes we're like, oh, maybe it's too technical or it's too specific and I cannot explain. But we need to keep trying, and we need to have an open discussion about this with everyone around, like the kids, the family and friends, and the politicians have to be open about this. So I think it's everyone has to be involved, and everyone has to care about it, because, yeah, I think.
Yeah, say the scientists have to make an effort to talk a language that everyone can understand. That's for sure. And also the communication. So that's the communication between scientists and the public.
Yeah.
But you also have to communicate with the politicians. And sometimes we communicate with the politicians, but well, they do what they want with what we're saying.
Yeah.
So it depends on the government, really.
No, don't have anything to add. Okay. Notre prochaine question est de Facebook de Danny. Quel est le salaire moyen annuel d'un scientifique? Si vous savez.
So our salary is actually public. Ah oui, pardon, excuse-moi. Notre salaire est public.
Ouais.
Tout le monde peut aller le voir sur Internet, sur le site du gouvernement du Canada. Alors, je vais dire la fourchette. On commence vers... non, un peu plus bas. Ok, 65 000 par année. Et je crois que les meilleurs scientifiques, mais là, il faut une bonne carrière, on finit à 140 000, il me semble.
Okay. Our next question is from Kelsey from Facebook. In your early career days, what are some of the most important steps you made to be successful?
I think it would be the term that comes in mind is showing off. It's not showing off. It's making yourself known.
Yeah, that's important.
So going to conferences, present your work as much as you can, because your work is what gives it is your worth, basically. So you have to publish articles, and you have to present your work as much as you can. Once your name is known, then it's easier for you.
I would say also that just in your team, you have to build confidence, and you have to be there and take your place. And sometimes it's by, like Camille said, just showing what you did, presenting your work on a week-to-week basis. Explain what you've done, and how you've done it, because for sure in science it's the how you do it that is the most important, not the results. Sometimes you don't have results, but you're still presenting your methodology, and that's the biggest part. And just so that people around you, and even in your close team, that they have confidence in you and your knowledge, you have to take your place and ask questions. And sometimes you don't have to, even if you're shy a little bit about it, you have to take your place and ask questions, and don't be shy that it's stupid question,
Right,
or
yeah.
because everyone has a different
Opinion and views on
area
it.
and yeah, exactly, expertise, and so you have to be, if you want to be a part of the team, it takes time, but you have to go through those steps again and again.
I would definitely agree about the importance of making yourself visible so that people have heard of you and might be more willing to at least consider you for a job in the future. I think a surprising number of people, more than you might think, would be willing to give information interviews as well, just to get to know you and give you advice about particular career paths. If you can leave resumes with those people, that is great. Not necessarily that they will circulate them and find you a job right away or anything, but it's good for people to have on file, to remember who you are. You can come back to them, a little while down the road, touch base again. Basically just try and seek out good mentors and come back to them.
Thank you, Margaret. Sally, it's time to wrap up today's event. J'aimerais dire un gros merci à nos scientifiques, Dr. Camille Garneau, Dr. Danae Paquet-Ricard, and Margaret Zawatsky, d'être ici et de partager leur histoire et expérience. If you wish to know more about women in science in the Government of Canada, you can visit us at our website at science.gc.ca. We hope to see you at our next Ask a Scientist event. Thank you et à la prochaine.